We are excited and ignited to be hosting you, to be greeting you for the third edition of ET Diversity and Inclusion Summit 2024, brought to you by the Global DEI Alliance in its first ever on-ground avatar, as we can see, full-fledged, absolutely, themed also thoughtfully, I must say, reset, redefine, and reconnect. It is time that with all the pride that we've got, you join me in very warmly welcoming our keynote speaker, Shrikant Bola, on the stage.
My parents were poor agricultural farmers, yet they gave me utmost love and care, and I'm so grateful to them for it. That is why from a young age, I was determined not to be a financial burden on them. Yet they were able to bring me up against all odds in spite of not having meaningful employment, meaningful wealth, and financial assistance, insurance, and whatnot. And this is where, my dear friends, I have learned that compassion is actually what makes a person rich, and not the money in this world. Just because my parents were so compassionate couple, I am today standing in front of you telling this tale, and of course I became the richest man at heart just because of my parents' great care and concern. The setbacks I had in life actually enabled me to gain more exposure. This is why I believe right exposure at the right age to right things is the most important thing. But what do you do with that exposure purely depends on our talent and hard work. But without right exposure, right ecosystem and mentors, all your talent won't take you beyond breaking stones by hand all day. When I saw a small manufacturing sector in India, I saw a lot of problems. Let me tell you, the concept of a cottage industry is nothing but a terrible idea. Low scale, substandard, subscalable enterprise. But if you can't grow, you can't become efficient and innovate. Without efficiency and innovation, you will fall further behind. With this vision, we started Bolant Industries in the sustainable environmental space and paper and packaging. Our vision was to create world-class products that people should be proud of using, by using people who are the margins of the society and using the material out of waste. We chose to employ people who are underprivileged, uneducated, and disabled, and challenged. I always build my life on failures and challenges. I say, let the challenge come in, let me work hard, and let the universe help me succeed. Thank you.
Why gender inclusion matters for the workplace for tomorrow. Let the experts do the talk, and let's excavate what do the experienced minds have for us.
I've seen many companies take diversity inclusion as a separate initiative. If you actually look at companies' performance and people who have been ahead in this journey, it actually improves the company performance. How does this actually help you improve your company?
Is profitability really affected by gender, or is affected by skill sets? Do women have special skill sets? The answer is yes. Whereas the technicians, the engineers have to spend more time in manufacturing and developing those skill sets, developing those innovative products, where retention of technicians and engineers is so important. And what we have observed, especially in Tamil Nadu area, is the retention for women technicians is better than men.
I don't believe profitability necessarily has a gender dimension. There are times in market where you participate, you do well, you have all the skills, but you don't perform. And that happens to men and women both. So to say that has profitability improved, I guess the imperative to me is saying, well, are we building an organization that with its diversity, and that by that I mean gender and mindset, can actually combat and adapt to varying challenges in an unprecedented world? I think that's the environment you are targeting. The outcome is expected to be better profitability, but there are no guarantees.
When it comes to India, I think there is a very strong cultural angle to India. And we often see that while we have an equal population, we don't see that represented in the workforce. We want to ensure that we are an equal opportunity organization, and that we encourage the diversity of gender, because they do bring in a diversity of thought. So we believe that diversity is important.
Can we please request Roshni Rathi, the Managing Director and Partner, Boston Consulting Group, along with Shivai Gulati, the Project Leader, Boston Consulting Group, to please take charge and help us with the launch proceedings. Over to the two of you.
Thank you so much. If you think about where is growth in India going to come from? It's going to come from India being the powerhouse for the world, whether it is services or it is manufacturing. We're going to add value not just in India, but globally. And the reality is, I think we heard about the male participation rate. The male participation rate is high. And for us to actually create more productivity within the country, we need more individuals to participate in the formal economy. Right? And so if you think about it, 4 out of 5 states that are expecting manufacturing to grow don't have enough men in the local state. But we need women to participate to even drive local economies. I will hand over to my colleague Shivai now to walk us through the insights from this.
How do organizations advance their journey ahead? What steps do they need to take? The survey also helped us consolidate some best practices and leading differentiating steps that organizations are taking, which enable them to be ahead of the curve. For inclusive organization, ensuring interview panels are sensitized. For inclusive products and services, really identifying market segments which were not yet captured and making products and services for them. In inclusive partner selection and engagement, going beyond CSR, having a specific supplier diversity policy, ensuring D&I is a metric when selecting vendors. In women, going ahead of the standard maternity policies that we do have to offer maternity counseling as well. And finally, for persons with disability, ensuring we help support in financing appropriate disability aids. Thank you so much.
Next fireside chat coming up, which is all about growing together.
Implementing diversity and inclusion in Kargil, what are some of the challenges that you have faced?
We started some programs like, for example, Stantol, which is a flagship program which is more peer learning, experiential, and a lot of sharing and storytelling. It helps women at mid-career levels to prepare for more senior leadership roles. It helps with influencing, negotiation, standing up for yourself, the courage to say no. That's an 18-week program, so that's one. The second is motivating mothers, or momos, as we call it. This focuses on how do you seamlessly integrate pre-maternity and post-maternity, and mainly aimed at returning mothers to provide that support. It's a combination of assistance to the new mother, sensitization for the manager of that colleague, and also senior leadership support, mentoring, conversations about next steps in career, etc. So they've been incredibly successful.
What are some of the specific key metrics you have to track DEI within your organization?
First of all, you need to have a dashboard that is reviewed, and leaders review this in the meetings, and it has to be part of the leaders' goals. Second is to look at through it the HR life cycle. For example, hiring. How many CVs have you got? Is it equally represented? Is the panel inclusive? Are the JDs inclusive? So those are a couple of matrices, the diverse sources or segments you are hiring from. Once a colleague is onboarded, sensitization, how effective that sensitization is through feedback, etc. And of course, awareness sessions for people already in the organization. And sorry, I mentioned hiring. It doesn't mean external hiring only. Even the IJPs are the women or people with disabilities progressing, or you've hired and they're stuck in the organization. So these are some of the matrices I think are crucial and a must to measure.
We are now entering into witnessing a panel discussion that shall unfold on the stage. Now, this will be about people, pride, and purpose.
How can organizations really create a cultural shift, and how can allyship really play an important role in doing so?
How many allies can we convert from being passive allies to what I would call as warrior activists? As we build more activists, we still need to sensitize those who are entering the doors.
Really be great to understand, how can fashion industry do more and also support the expression of LGBTQ individuals?
one of our flagship brand, Anook, the first ad of Anook. It was really about a same-sex couple and preparing for, the parents to meet each other. It went viral. So we really stirred conversation which nobody really had thought of, right? And how do you use fashion to convey very sensitive subjects, but with empathy and care?
What are some of the challenges that you see that organizations face in trying to be more inclusive, and what can we learn from your experience?
If a gender queer person or a trans person is entering the workplace, will your security person let them in? There is so much bias that we have right from the entry gate to the boardroom. Addressing all of those challenges is one of the things that we do. So the first thing is the mental block, bringing leadership buy-in so that there is actually not just mental and change and awareness. There is also investment of money and time towards this.
And why it's important to be open in the company, and what can companies do to encourage employees to come out?
So each of our managers and their teams are duly sensitized even in this kind of a process. When you ensure that every single step the organization understands and is willing to walk that additional mile, employees start trusting you, and that's when coming out happens.
Mental health is a really important issue. What can workplaces do differently to support the employees within this?
How to have a better mental health support at the workplace? We work at two levels. One is in general removing stigma about mental health challenges, taboo, destigmatizing things, So we can do a lot of awareness workshop drives to make people understand that brain is also an organ and it can fall ill.
Summits like these are important because they allow industry and participants to come together to talk about what matters for all of us. So each one of these events is very inspiring because it allows us to think more broadly about what we can do towards diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're firmly wedded to diversity, equity, and inclusion in everything that we do. It's integral to how we operate. And therefore, this is a journey that we've been on and consistently will continue to be on, because it matters to us that we have a diversity in terms of both how we think about what we do and how we contribute to the community we work with and what we do with the community. And we have to be ensuring that we include everybody whom we can, whether it's women, whether it's the LGBT plus community, whether it's the differently enabled. When I look at it from the context of the LGBT plus community, the Spectrum ERG that Barclays has is invested very deeply. How we empower them to take that forward within their own communities, because obviously, at the end of the day, anybody who comes in to work with us is being hopefully enabled to then take another step forward to go and do something more within their own community. And therefore, the broader influence of what we do outside as we work inside with people from the community is equally important for us.
The Fireside Chat, a place for everyone, building a workplace that works for all. The power of love, everybody.
What inspired HDFC Ergo to launch the campaign, and how is it showing up in your everyday operations?
The genesis of Love All for us really is the journey from diversity to inclusion. We realized that while there have been a lot of initiatives on diversity, but how do we make sure that we have an inclusive workplace where everyone feels heard and understood at the workplace? So that's really how Love All started. We already have more than 200 companies who've participated in the open source movement. We also realized that while there is a lot of emphasis on the letter of Love All, but inclusion, but spirit is something that needed to get done, which is beyond just the policies and practices, but to give a knock on the heart for people who can inspire, influence, policy making and making sure the practices in organizations. So Love All is a movement towards that. Also to the semi-organized sector where they don't have the luxury of having a D&I champion or an HR person to look after this agenda. So it's HDFC Ergo's way of telling them that you can participate in this and you get access to the collaterals and the entire infrastructure for diversity and inclusion. So that's really about Lavol for us.
So actually, it's often said that diversity is policy and inclusion is mindset. So at HDFC Ergo, how do you ensure that all employees existing and potential, they feel valued and included at the workplace and even in this campaign?
So at HDFC Ergo, we feel that diversity is transformation of mind because we're creating space for everyone. Whereas inclusion is a knock on the heart. That even if I create space for everyone, but for me to be really feeling for another colleague is really from the heart, and that's truly inclusion. So what we are trying to do, like I said, we invite people to bring their whole selves to work. So thereby we're saying that if you're to democratize across where employee at the last mile feels included, the managers who are delivering the experience to the last mile are to be included. Let me give you a data point here. We've nearly doubled our gender diversity numbers in the last 3 years. And that has happened because people across the organization at different levels, they've made gender diversity as their agenda, that I will have a better gender balanced mix in my own team. So we've seen success in this, and now we want to replicate this model for other diversities, which is people with different orientation, with different abilities. So that's what our short-term goal is.
This is time for yet another panel discussion. This will be about innovation, inclusion, integration, making a business case for inclusion of persons with disabilities.
In all the work that you do, what do you find? Why do companies think about inclusion of persons with disabilities?
I believe it motivates company to hire or get engaged with person with disability because they want that their workplace should be more diverse and welcoming. And the motivation comes from realizing that most of the organizations are not inclusive enough.
You at Tata Power have managed to incorporate persons with disability into core operations. Can you tell us a little bit about how you do that?
The job mapping basically links the job roles to the physical, cognitive, and sensory characteristics of all the persons with disabilities. And we arrived at a set of roles in the manufacturing plant where we can recruit. It was a difficult route to take. We did not settle with taking PWDs in support functions. We said we will take them in mainstream operating roles, and we did.
Cultivating the talent pool and quote-unquote supply of employees with who are persons with disabilities has been a challenge. Have you all walked that path? What have you done, and how have you worked on cultivating that?
I gave a challenge to my team that we should hire people with disabilities in a line function like HR, in core jobs like HR business partnering. And these people started doing really well, and line leaders started coming back to us and said that, can we make a case out of it?
As I understand, SAP has done quite a lot of work on the invisible disabilities side. Would love to hear more about it.
So what we have really tried to do is, over a period of last 10 years, created wonderful, avenues for people to, be more aware about, autism, make ways for us to integrate them. And finding the right role and fitment is really important for the success of this program. So that is something which we have been, playing a huge role there.
How should companies think about the broader ecosystem, and how does one best leverage it?
We did in KFC. Instead of a fire alarm, the entire KFC had red lights blinking for persons with speech and hearing impairment. These are reasonable adjustments. Now, every organization may or may not have the bandwidth or the resource or champions of inclusivity to do this exercise. And that's where we come in. When you hire one person with disability in the company, you are sensitizing the 99% who are working with them.
How do you give a sense of belonging to persons with disability?
Yeah. So we've started building quality roles where we've hired people with disabilities in our factories. You can't have somebody with a disability to manage a machine standing up if that's a challenge, but being intentional help. That's what led to a lot of advocacy and action, which continues. It'll not going to stop, it continues.
Thank you so much, Darshika. I want to thank the panel for tackling this issue from so many different angles. So thank you so much.
It's the trilogue time, frame by frame, looking at inclusivity through a creative lens.
I don't think we can live in an empowered world where the norm and where the power lies does not have a more expansive imagery of what can success look like. How do we begin and how do we start constructing the idea of masculinity in more redefined ways?
I grew up in a family where my brother is a scientist. We grew up together. And at one point, I realized I'm gay, and he realized he was straight, and my parents accepted both of us. But for 40 years of my life, I've spent being criminalized by law and still fighting to make something which I really don't understand. What is this problem? How difficult it is for the straight world to understand that another person has equal rights to be happy, and how is my happiness affecting?
Have you seen bodies of work created through a very cisgendered heteronormative lens in the past? And do you see there's a more conscious effort to co-opt communities today?
You know, it also depends, not just the advertising fraternity. They just follow what the client wants them to. So you have clients like Tata's who actually set a norm by briefing the agency by saying that we want to include people who are not normally included as normal. And so they are the only client I know to date who has actually taken a stand on inclusivity.
How progressive our portrayals can be is also a function of the society that we live in. Where does one toe the line? Where does one put up the good fight?
Yeah, so I think a lot of this actually has to do with culture, right? I mean, do you really believe that that is the right thing to do? And I think if you do, you will find a way to put it out. However, if you think it is one of those fashionable things to kind of say and, you know, talk maybe in panels, but not necessarily do in your organizations, or you don't have that courage or that conviction or that belief that it is right, you will never find the courage to put it out. Do we actually believe truly in diversity? Do we truly believe in inclusion? What kind of, I mean, it boils down to what kind of a person you are. And I think just as human beings, if we ask ourselves, we know it's the right thing to do. Even for individuals to kind of push the agenda when they truly believe in it, for organizations to hopefully make space for that and to stand behind, I think, decisions that they've made.
I must say, it gives us great pleasure, and with great heart, we would now like to welcome our new members to the GDEIA community, the growing community, I must say, as DEI Crusaders. Wow, what a lovely way to address. So may I take the pleasure of requesting the very inspirational Shrikant Bola to please come forward and help us with the felicitation ceremony. Can you all please bring some amazing round of applause as we welcome Barclays on the stage. Well, coming on stage is Birla Soft. Let's also acknowledge now Deutsche Bank, and we request you to please come forward. Can we please have Merck Life Science walking up next? Can we please have Nexus Select Mall Management taking up? Please welcome Otis Elevator Company up next. Publicis Sapient is up next. Can we please have Renaya Refining walking up next? Defeat Technologies, could we request you to please come forward? And with that, Synchrony International Services. Give a big hand to yourselves. Thank you, and you can pat your back as well. So thank you so much. Your presence means a lot to us.